Hello everyone, it's Crystal Ether here, and I hope the new year's been treating you well so far. North gets their turn to celebrate the beginning of 2025 by prying it from the hands of the South sector. And this passion set is far more dangerous than their delicate appearance suggests. For your wallet, of course. These cards come with stronger buffs for the team at the cost of requiring BP to cast and a lack of secondary effects, but their consistency is well worth the trouble, especially if you're in need of a passion team. Let's take a look. If you missed out on Christmas Marion last year, then his New Year's version will fulfill your buffing needs, even at level 60. Marion's first skill is a trifecta of offense buffs, providing a boost to your ally's critical rate, damage against cool enemies, and burst damage with a short cooldown. The one stack is a shame, but ultimately expected with how powerful these buffs can snowball if given time to accumulate. Marion's second skill is more substantial for shorter fights, providing all allies with a level 2 attack stack as well as a 3-turn massive flat critical rate buff. This flat buff works alongside any stackable critical rate buffs that are applied to your heroes, so this skill will remain useful regardless of how long the battle takes. Limit breaking this card is encouraged if you're willing to spare the emblems, as the 2-turn initial cooldown can add up if your DPS cards aren't strong enough to carry the team. Of course, you could work around this with a full North team using the 4th anniversary event frame and Marion's waterfront frame, but these might be out of your reach depending on your luck and when you started playing. New Year's Marion doesn't have anything notable for offense with a basic burst skill, but his link skill is the cherry on top for any DPS who can maximize their critical hit rate. Many of North's recent DPS cards such as Christmas Victor, Valentine's Gast, and New Year's Ren, who I'll discuss later, have ways to buff up their critical rate, critical damage, or both stats over time, giving this link plenty of mileage. If you do manage to obtain this card, you'll find that Marion's support frame options are not so cut and dry. Marion's Chapter 10 frame is a 3-star frame that inflicts a stack of defense down onto a single foe, while also granting him BP gauge, all at the cost of 10% of Marion's current HP upon casting. While the BP increase is capped at 10% at max limit break, it can make up some of the BP needed for Marion's second skill. The North Mentor's 2024 birthday frame is another option to support a DPS, giving one selected ally the ability to generate SP orbs for himself when attacked by applying a 4-turn substitute buff onto that hero. While this isn't a huge problem on its own, unprepared commanders who don't watch their DPS's HP might find that hero hitting the floor sooner than they think. Gast starts off the new year with a decent skill set for his rarity, bringing both buffs and debuffs to assist the North sector. His first skill is a team-wide stackable buff boosting critical damage and damage against cool enemies with 1 stack per cast. However, this alone puts New Year's Gast above most 3-star supports, provided you can work around its initial cooldown. Gast's second skill is a massive attack and defense debuff onto a single target, which is fine despite its 30 BP cost. However, single stat debuffs are more powerful than multi-stat debuffs, but this skill will stack with any stackable defense debuffs you might apply. Gast's burst skill is one example, providing the staple level 1 defense down debuff that most 3-star event cards have. His link skill is just a cherry on top to help reach that 100% critical hit rate early in the fight, though keep in mind that it'll lose value if you have other ways to manually boost the stat. Going further with this rookie's support capabilities is easy with his many support-oriented frames, such as his Gunslinger frame, trading 10% of Gast's HP for a massive boost to attack for your high damage turns. Alternatively, Gast's New Year's Show frame provides one ally with 3 SP orbs on demand, making it very useful for hypercarry teams, and its 3-star rarity allows this choice to be very accessible to free-to-play commanders. Finally, Gast's 2024 birthday frame is a niche option that can help one ally push out more burst skills. Pick this frame if you have another ally to provide your DPS with attack orbs, as the effect is substantial even with no limit breaks. As a tip, the Ren Welfare card of this set would really appreciate this effect if you can set him up. Victor is the least impactful hero of the banner cards, which is a bit of a misnomer as he's still better than most 3-star cards, including the ones released last year. The fault lies with Victor's first skill, which is just a BP battery with a very low cooldown that can help cover the cost of his second skill. Said second skill is unfortunately locked behind a 1-turn initial cooldown at best, but provides 2 stacks of critical rate up to all allies. The HP regeneration effect can be ignored as it's not strong enough to matter and can't ramp up. Like Gast, Victor also applies a stack of defense down upon using his burst skill, but you might not use it since New Year's Victor is much more dependent on his second skill to provide team support. With his short cooldowns, you'll be hard-pressed to get Victor's burst skill off without sacrificing too much damage from your DPS cards. The Mentor's burst gauge link skill is adequate, but the least useful of all link skills as it doesn't directly boost damage output and won't be very helpful for hero cards that generate BP gauge through critical hits or skills. Thankfully, Victor has some tried and true mainframe options that makes him one of the best support heroes, and none of them have any notable overlap with New Year's Victor's skill set. His Chapter 7 frame is both accessible as a 3-star frame and noticeably effective with the poison damage modifier it has, which isn't easily replicated by most North cards, but comes at the cost of 30 BP gauge. You may need to spend some attack orbs on Victor to maintain the effects of his second skill in this frame, but your team's performance will benefit from the action multiplier if you can pull it off. Victor's Chapter 4 frame is another option despite its long cooldown, reducing skill cooldowns by 1 turn. It's helpful if you want to get this card's second skill online on turn 1, but it's unlikely you'll use this frame skill again in a single fight with its staggering 10-turn cooldown and max limit break. Victor's Halloween frame is a single target buff granting one ally a massive boost to attack in exchange for a 20% defense debuff, which will leave a low investment DPS vulnerable. Provided that your DPS doesn't have a flat attack buff, combining this frame skill with other massive DPS boosts can help secure that low turn count clear. Ren is this team's DPS card with an emphasis on critical damage to really bring the pain. Both of his skills boost the stat for Ren himself, so you'll have no problems tackling future cool attribute bosses if you can maintain his critical hit rate. Ren's first skill provides a massive flat boost to critical damage as well as the beloved BP generation upon critical hit effect that can help Ren clean up bosses with multiple burst skills. The cooldown is quite short even with no limit breaks, but acquiring multiple copies is easily possible as a welfare unless your count is new or underdeveloped. His second skill is also a self-buff, giving Ren 2 stacks of attack up and critical damage up with no initial cooldown when he's max limit broken. The 30 BP cost makes sense for its strength and its cooldown will align with Ren's first skill so long as he's at least level 90. The worst part of New Year's Ren is his burst skill, which really isn't a drawback so much as just underwhelming. It's a plain massive modifier burst skill with no extra effects, which isn't bad at all, and it gets the job done if nothing else. On second thought, asking for more power creep is a terrible idea. Ignore me. Moving on to Tamer Pastures, Ren has a critical hit rate link skill, which would be useful if you ran a sub DPS alongside him, but otherwise unremarkable if he's the only DPS card on the team. For example, a burst gauge up link would be better for Ren in a full New Year's North team, as both Gast and Victor apply a stackable defense down debuff with their burst skills. Alternatively, that link skill could reduce the number of attacks you'd allocate to your supports while ensuring they have enough BP to activate their skills. Ren's DPS frame options are very limiting as most of his frames are support oriented or rely on the freeze debuff. His best DPS frames are limited or must be fished through the gacha, though New Year's Ren doesn't need them to function his role. A generic BP battery frame can work just fine if you don't have any of the following recommendations. The Other Side Heroes gacha frame featuring Ren is a better option that can help the hero quickly build up his attack and critical damage stacks, applying twice on full auto if Ren is in the first slot of the team. The cooldowns align with the New Year's Ren's own skills, so he can snowball extremely quickly, especially if you go out of your way to max limit break this frame. Ren's Gunslinger vent frame is a cheap but limited alternative that inflicts an attack and defense debuff onto a single foe, while also giving Ren a single SP orb, which is simple yet effective with its 6-turn cooldown and max limit break. However, the best in slot frame for almost any DPS Ren card is his 2023 birthday frame, which lowers his skill cooldowns by 1 turn, while also giving Ren 2 SP orbs. With a 6-turn cooldown, it can be used frequently in a single fight, and the cooldown reduction effect is useful for this card regardless of limit break level. New Year's North is a practical passion set that can work well even at low investment and can fill a hole in your roster with their many support-oriented frames and existing welfare. You can easily mix and match with other North welfares like Christmas Marion, Idle Gast, and Coffee Victor despite their differing attributes for some amazing support capabilities, but overall, this set is definitely one to rob your rupees by appearance alone. That's all for this video review, and if it was helpful, I'd appreciate if you consider subscribing to the channel.